Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan, along with my co-host, Kathryn Peterson. And today we are going to dig into a topic that, as a coach, I think gets discussed with every client I work with, usually early in our coaching agreement and then regularly throughout that time, because every one of us at some point in time identifies our unique value proposition. So we're going to talk about the UVP today. What it is, what it isn't, why to use it, how to use it, when to use it. So plan on today being a tactical episode. And if you want to take notes, great. If you want to share this with other folks on your team, we're certainly encouraged anytime our audience shares our episodes. And we value your comments. So if you've had experiences with exercising a UVP in your practice and you want to share those notes, please add them on our YouTube channel in the comments section. We love to read those comments. We love to engage with you. But without further setup on this one, let me welcome in my favorite co-host, Kathryn Peterson.
Thanks so much, Michael. Good to be here. And this is, I think, a topic that can get discussed over and over again because there's so many questions about it. And it is kind of a complex topic. So I'm excited to dig into a little bit. Every time I talk about it, I learn more because it's something that's kind of a continuous process. So let's get into it.
Excellent.
All right. So first, what is a UVP, unique value proposition?
So everyone understands those three words. Anytime we spell it out, they understand those words. So I like to separate them and talk about them in the context of what each of them means, because often what I find is if we don't share a common definition of what those words mean, then you could walk away thinking UVP means something a little bit different than I do. And therefore, we end up maybe a little bit disconnected in terms of how to help each other out, because that's really my end game with UVP. I want it to be a clear communication of that unique value proposition that each of us has that allows us to help other people. So if I understand yours, you understand mine, then we're able to better introduce each other when we want to refer. We're better able to kind of back each other up when the circumstances require it. And so let's break those down. Now, first of all, let's take the word unique. I think this one is really the toughest of the three words for most people. So let's hit it right up front. Most people don't know how to identify what makes their value proposition unique. They don't have a good sense of that because they're living in their own world. So you're no different than this. I'm no different than this. We live in a world. So as a full-time coach, I just know how to be me. As a full-time branch leader and producer, you know how to be you, but you don't think of your daily routine or your daily engagement as being highly unique. And so that's the first thing I want to encourage everyone to recognize is that don't set this bar of unique as being some sort of super standard. Unique means simply this, just a little bit different enough from everyone else that you're able to stand out when put side by side. So I'll use your profession as a great example, since a lot of our audience is in the housing industry. If I were to line up Kathryn Peterson with 5 other lenders and we were to talk about, what value each of you brought, at some point I would say, well, Kathryn, then what makes you just a little bit different than every other lender that's in this room? And your ability to articulate the uniqueness of your value proposition, I think, is what creates the separation. And let's just jump to the chase. I think often what makes every one of us unique is that we're all created uniquely. We're all unique people. So don't miss that. Don't miss the idea that this isn't some super standard you're setting for yourself. It's just recognizing that the way you're wired is unique. The way you communicate, the way you interact, the way you handle your business. All those things make you unique. And we want to know that about you so that we can best align you with other people who value those things, and you can help more people because they recognize your uniqueness. So that's where I always start with UVP is let's attack what makes you unique.
And one thought that I had done, and I might have brought this up before, but is reaching out to a few people that know you best and saying, hey, what makes me unique? Or you had 3 different lenders to choose from and you chose me again. Tell me why. And I think that that can really help you see the uniqueness in yourself. And I think that that's because it does get hard to see ourselves and what makes us unique because we think everybody does it the way that we do it. So it's a good exercise to go through if you have not done that before.
Yeah, you have referenced that before, and please reference it again because I don't think we can overlook the simplicity of that by getting that feedback, whether you do it via conversation, whether you do it via phone call, whether you do it via an email, although that's not my favorite version of communication. All of those can be effective in giving someone permission to give you a response to that. And the beauty of it is, as they do, you might be surprised at the simplicity of their answer. They may not be wowed by the amazing CRM that you've invested in. They may not understand your marketing campaign. They may not really care about the videos you produce or the classes you teach. You might find out that what they really value is you're such a good listener. You really ask great questions. You demonstrate care. Things like this that are maybe shocking to some of us when we hear them the first time because we think, well, of course I am. That aren't we all good listeners? Don't we all ask good questions? We all should care. I don't think that's true. I don't think everyone does. And so be prepared that the answer might surprise you, that you invest a lot of time and energy into things that don't really make you unique. And it's the uniquely you that stands out.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, now I want to hear about the V.
Okay, so think about value as an exchange. Both parties have to recognize value in order for value to be exchanged. And so this is a simple concept when we're making a purchase. So there's an item of value you want to buy. Maybe it's a new pair of shoes, and you don't have time to call Roy Michelle to figure this out for you. So you've got to go buy your own shoes. Little tip to an old story there. And so when you're going to go buy those shoes, you're going to make a value judgment based on how great they are for what you need. Could be athletic shoes, could be dress shoes, could be casual. And then the price that's available for that pair of shoes. You're going to make a judgment based on that. So value is simply um, recognized on both sides of that transaction. Someone thinks it's worth selling at this price. Someone thinks it's worth buying at that price. Well, we're no different. We're bringing products and services into the market. So as a listener, regardless of the business that you run, you are bringing value to the marketplace. And I think when you recognize that your value has to match up with what someone is willing to pay for it, you get really clear on where the value lies. So that's the key with the value portion of the UVP is you might think certain things are important. I see this all the time in real estate. Well, I think my home should be listed higher than, you've told me the comps are worth because they've placed a higher value than the market is willing to pay for it. Um, the sooner we recognize alignment in those values, which is never a perfect thing, it's fluid, but you have to get within a range in which someone can connect with that value or engage with that value in order to move toward a transaction. I think that's key. So if I were giving any tips on this one, it is if you want a better sense of your value, ask better questions about what the person that might be buying is valuing. Understand where they start. If you're starting very far apart, you're going to have to work very hard to build trust to bring that gap closer together. Sometimes you may find out that you're already much closer than you think. And in that case, like every good sales professional, I'd say, stop selling, stop talking. They recognize your value. You can move forward. So value is a key piece. Just recognize it's a two-way exchange. Just because you think something is important to you doesn't mean the audience necessarily connects with it. You've got to find out what they care about.
And I think one great example of this might be, let's say you're like, ooh, hey, for every client, I do a housewarming party. Well, if we're dealing with an extreme introvert, they're going to be like, I'm good. I don't want that value.
Yeah.
So you do have to have it be something, and it might be something that you're great at doing, but it may not really be helpful for
It's
them.
actually an excellent example because most of us could understand that. Depending upon your style, that might be really exciting to you or really terrifying to you, or someplace maybe you're even in between. Like I could care less. Like it's just neutral. Um, I think what probably helps someone connect the dots with that is just what you said. Let's ask that question up front. Hey, I normally offer this to clients, especially when we've had a great working experience, because I really want to help them feel connected to their home, connected to their new neighbors. So here's what we do. We put this, housewarming party together, but give them permission to let you know whether or not they care about that idea versus pushing that idea, making them feel like they kind of have to accept it and then finding out later they're not very grateful for it. It didn't produce very good exchange. And now all of a sudden you're frustrated thinking, well, I spent all this energy and money and time and they didn't care. Maybe ask that question up front.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we have one more part.
Yeah, the proposition. And it's funny. I'm full of bad dad jokes. In fact, I think I have a great book right there on the shelf full of them. Um, I often think the proposition part is a big miss because we make a lot of assumptions in our exchange. Well, uh, they know what I do. They know the value I bring. They know how unique I am. So why make a proposition? It's already obvious. It's not always obvious. And here's the bad dad joke. Kathryn, if you go home tonight and you start winking at Todd in the dark, you know what you're thinking, but he doesn't have a clue what's going on. And this is a lot like what happens in sales. We often think, oh, just because I'm present in the real estate marketplace, because I show up at the realtor tour meetings, or because I show up and teach a class, or because I've made my calls today, or whatever activity you're put social media posts out there. It's like we think, oh, well, the world clearly understands then that they should connect with me. Sometimes you actually have to spell it out. You make a proposition. This is what I can do for you. Would you like my help with this? Would this be of value to you? Those are propositions. We actually have to ask for the sale. And that seems so obvious, especially if those of you listening are um, full-time sales professionals, but you'd be surprised at how often people are passive with the proposition. They're comfortable with the unique and the value, and they just don't tie it down. So you've got to have all three. You cannot be unique without a value proposition. You cannot add value without your uniqueness and your ability to propose. And please don't be unique and valuable and make no proposition at all. I just think you got to tie them all down.
Surprisingly, I don't know if I've heard it broken down like that before. So I appreciate that because I have a little bit different view of it than I did before. So thank you for that.
Well, that's ironic because that's exactly how you teed up our episode. You said every time I talk about it, I learn something new. And to be fair, I think this is a topic that gets talked about a lot in sales because it's such a common, I mean, you hear you've probably heard UVP for the last 25 years of your career. It's not
No,
like a concept we're not aware of, but we sometimes just brush it off quickly as, oh, yeah, I know what that is. And once we break it down and think about it, we give ourselves permission to realize I could get better at this. I could get better at identifying each of those components. And I think once we've done that, we really increase the opportunity for people to engage with our UVP. And audience, isn't that what you really want? I mean, hopefully, if you're an entrepreneurial person running a business, selling for a company, a product or a service, don't you want people to connect with you and what you do in the hopes that if they need something that you can offer, you could help them with that item? It's not too difficult when you break it down.
absolutely. Absolutely. So now that we've broken it down, why is a UVP and having one so important?
I suppose a lot of it is going to come from the inside before it comes out. And what I mean by that is, as you are confident in your unique value proposition and you've made the commitment to have those communications that we just discussed, your confidence level as a person, as a professional person, is going to be measurably stronger because once you know who you are and what you want and why you want it and who you're trying to connect with, your ability to say yes to the right opportunities and your ability to let go of the ones that aren't right is measurably higher. Because once you know your unique value proposition, guess what? Not every lead is a good lead. Not every deal is a good deal.
Mm.
Not every referral source is a good referral partner. And this is a hard concept for us to accept as we desperately need leads and deals and partners. But it is a true statement that if you make the commitment to yourself that every lead is a good lead, well, guess what? You will wear yourself out. You will literally wear yourself out because some of these leads that you're going to get are dead end roads. And your ability to recognize that up front because your UVP is in conflict with where they find value, or they don't see what you do as unique, or they don't accept your proposition. The further you push on that, you're burning good energy that could have been used to connect with someone who really does care about the uniqueness of your value proposition. So I think, the reality is it really boosts your confidence in knowing how to say yes to the right opportunities and let the ones that aren't great pass by. They might be really great for someone else. Like our good friend Kim Mason said in a recent interview, sometimes I need to release a former referral partner back out into the marketplace.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I was like, oh, I need to write that one down. Okay, so then who needs a UVP?
So I think this one may have been spelled out, but I want to just nail it. I think both sides need it. And both sides meaning I think you have to be comfortable first and foremost in the uniqueness of your value proposition. And you have to be really clear on the value that you intend to bring. And you have to be really committed to the proposal part. You've got to really get the commitment to get your offer out there in a way that people can say yes or no to. But once you've done that, you really need to be, like we said earlier, a great listener, because I I think ideally in most circumstances you're dealing with other people who are trying to figure out if that's a good connection for them. And if that's true, then you're going to want to be able to make that connection. If it's not, you're going to want to be able to let it pass. So it really does take both sides. So who needs it is you need to be clear on what it is, and therefore really able to make it clear to the person who might not be thinking like that, but that's how they're operating. So consider your customer for a minute. They may not be using the words, "Hey, what is Kathryn's UVP?" That may not hit their vernacular, but I can guarantee you they are looking for those three pieces. They want to know what
Mhm.
makes this person different than all the other lenders I could talk to. What value is she bringing that I care enough about that I'd be willing to commit to work with her? And proposition, hey, what is the deal? Like, tell me the best option available to me, or maybe give me several options like we might do in a total cost analysis so that I can make a great choice. Everyone's thinking this way, even if they don't use those terms. So I think both sides really do need it.
Great. And then, so I'm just imagining somebody saying, hey, what's your UVP? Which, of course, we talked about never happens. So let's talk about how does someone use the UVP in a business context that doesn't make it awkward?
I think when I talk to most folks as a coach, and I'm helping them prepare this, let's say they've gone through the exercise you referenced earlier. They've sought the wisdom or counsel of people they care about who've spoken into them and said, "Hey, this is, where I find value in you. This is what I think makes you unique, and I love the way that you put that so clearly in front of me so I can make choices." So once they know, I think they can practice one of three things, maybe all three if they're really ready to do it. One is what often people call an elevator pitch. Think about how many times you're out in the marketplace, especially in a community like Steamboat Springs, where you probably just going to get a cup of coffee, run into people that are in your network. It
Mhm.
could be the customers you've served, could be the partners that you walk with. So your ability in 20 to 30 seconds to be able to communicate the uniqueness of your value proposition is pretty important. And so you've got to be clear on how to deliver that quickly, which means you better practice it. So that would be my first bit of advice is, get a elevator pitch written out that captures enough interest to make someone curious to say, "Ooh, hey, listen, I got to grab my coffee and go, but I'd like to learn more about that, or I'd like to understand more." Give them something that engages their curiosity enough to come back to you. If they leave a 20 to 30-second, "Hey, Kathryn, nice to meet you. What do you do?" And 30 seconds later, they're left with the thought of, "Oh, That's different than what I would have thought most people that are mortgage lenders do. I want to know more about that than, bullseye. You've connected your UVP with them in a way that drew them to be curious. The other two ways I won't unpack much further because I think these are stepping it up a level, but sometimes you're going to be in front of the room. I know you teach a lot of classes in your local marketplace. Someone might be marketing those classes. And so you need some version of a UVP that's your introduction, whether they're doing it in front of the room or whether they're doing it in the marketing that's going out to draw the people to register. There's something there that says, this is why Kathryn is worth spending some time with in this CE class or this, first time home buyer class or whatever the topic might be. So you need a different version of your UVP that I would call your introduction or your presentation introduction. I think the third and final one, which is rare, but it will come up, is think about the folks that we interview on our podcast. Think about folks that have a larger platform. They're going to maybe speak on a stage. They're going to really have a large audience. And so they may need a more of a biography snippet that's going to be a little longer than just the short intro in front of the room. And so that's a little bit longer format one. Doesn't get used as often, but your UVP needs to fit into each of those categories. The most common one is going to be the elevator pitch. So start there.
Great. That's a good guide. And so when someone's working through this, how much detail do they need to go into?
Keep it simple. That's always my rule. Here I am talking a lot about it because we're socializing the idea, but I would never want to encourage someone to get into some long, rambling version of this when they're out in front of their audience, because at that point, the audience, I mean, let's face it, you're not going to keep their attention. They're going to tune you out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think short and sweet does the job. And so, some lenders think their value proposition is, hey, I'm available after banking hours. Well, is that unique? Does no one else do that? Is that a really unique value proposition? It
No.
is a value prop. Might not be that unique. Some people think, hey, I have a large presence on social media. Well, are you the only lender that has an Instagram account and posts things? So you have to think through, how do I keep things short and sweet? And that goes back to what we said at the top, which is those things aren't necessarily, they may be part of the value that you're putting out into the market. So don't let me discount having a social media account. Don't let me discount any of that. It's just, don't think that makes you unique. You still have to get back to the simplicity of what's unique about you. And I think each of us have a unique ability. And once we identify with that, because we're either very self-aware or we're willing to submit to some outside input on that, we'll find that the way in which we can deliver that is very easy. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. And ultimately, it will allow you to create the separation you need. And Kathryn, just to give you a compliment, you did this once in a room we were in at a conference with a bunch of mortgage lenders in the room. And at some point, we did an exercise where we were journaling on a paper. I think this was with Renee Rodriguez. And we're journaling on paper around a lot of these words. And at some point, one of the words that was on there was care. And you reached over and on my journal and you circled it and said, Michael, that's it. Well, that's what makes you different as a coach. You actually care. You actually care about your clients. You care about their families. You care about their health. You care about their business. You care about them. And so when you said it that way, I thought, you're right. I can talk about 20 things that matter to me, but ultimately what I can't change about me naturally is I genuinely do care about the people I get to work with. And I just need to be comfortable that that's enough.
Thanks for sharing that story. I had forgotten about that, but and there's nothing like a conference to kind of have some time to think through those things that are special to yourself and to kind of digest and immediately put it down on paper. So thanks for sharing that with me. So then the other side of that, you kind of talked about things that were not unique, but can there be too much unique in the unique value proposition? And what are some examples of that?
Well, we're all familiar with the word quirky, and
Right.
and um, some of us like quirky. So let me be clear. but the audience that likes quirky is probably a little narrow. And so when your goal in defining your unique value proposition gets so narrow that suddenly you're just quirky and you've got a small audience that likes that, you might be missing out on an audience that would really connect just fine with you if you maybe didn't get so micro focused on your uniqueness. So I'll give you a couple examples of these in a narrowing, kind of a wider to narrower. All of us have unique interests, things that we care about. So one of the things I learned, I love music. Okay. I think lots of people love music, but not everybody likes the same music. Not everybody likes the same era, the same style. One of the bands that I think is pretty universally liked is a band Journey, thanks to a song that doesn't seem to go away. Um, we all know the song. You're already thinking of it in your head.
I'm
So,
not. Tell me, please, because I'm
oh
slow when
my
it comes to
goodness. Well,
music.
the audience knows it's Don't Stop Believing. So
Okay, thank you.
as you think of Journey, here's what's really interesting. They fought as a band for years to be a band that was creating an atmosphere of music that would take people on a journey away from maybe the troubles of real life. That was their mission as a band is when people put on our albums or come to our concerts, we want to take them on a journey away from the pressures of real life. So the music tended to be uplifting, tended to be feel good. It may have had some serious lyrical content, but it was designed to give you the upside of that topic that they were unpacking maybe in the lyrics. So it's feel good music. Well, it wasn't too long ago when, one of their band members decided to take a tour of the White House with a recently elected president and brought along a couple of other band members, and it caused a serious division in the band because one of the founder band members felt that that was a serious threat to their unique value proposition as a band. Suddenly, they were polarizing their audience because if people saw this as an act of support for that unique president, well, we all know how politics are in today's world. You're turning about half your audience off immediately. Well,
Mhm.
that became a real battle in that band, one that wasn't really fun to watch. I think they've gotten over it. I think they've figured out a way to make peace with each other. But in a wide context, I would say try to keep, politics out of your unique value proposition. It's probably not going to attract um, the audience that you can best serve. It's just going to narrow your audience. Now, you can make the argument that, yeah, but I only want to work with people who think like I do. If that's your commitment, go for it. But I think politics are one of those things to avoid because it does. It really, it it's too narrow. You're going to do that. I think the same can be true of other things in our lives. The old topics that everybody tells you to avoid, they tell you for a reason. Because when you get into politics or sex or religion, you get into topics that people feel very polarized about. And so
Mhm.
I think you just have to be careful with those. I don't want to imply that you can't have conviction. Everybody makes a choice. Just recognize that when you do, you're deciding how wide of an audience you're trying to serve. So if it's important to you to have access to the larger audience, I'd say stay away from things that polarize people right out of the gate. If you look beyond those, there may be things that you may have interest in. I mentioned music. I love sports. There's other things that I care about. Those also can be polarizing, but not in such a, we can disagree about, whether you think Journey's a good band. We can disagree on whether or not the Denver Broncos are the best football team or not. These are things we can agree to disagree over. So that's usually not going to separate us too much. But I think that's something you need to be thoughtful of is how you position yourself is going to help determine whether the audience can tune into that UVP. And if you give them a reason to tune you out early, just because you're quirky, just because you like, I'm just going to dig in and talk about these things, well, then be prepared to have a small audience. If you can leverage that, I'll give you one positive spin on this so no one thinks I'm, against a narrow audience. Let's say your narrow audience is really deep. Let's say that you are a wounded warrior, a veteran who served our country, and you've come home and you know an audience of people like you who need the help that you can provide. And so you decide to really focus on helping folks that serve, whether they served in active duty or they served in our police force or maybe in a fire force. They've been in some, line of active duty where their life was at risk, and you know how to connect with those people. Well, that's a narrow audience, but boy, is it a deep one. And maybe you're the right
Mhm.
person to do that. So I don't want anyone listening to think I don't like narrow. It's just be careful with your narrow, because you have to know whether or not it's, I guess, a hill you're willing to die on. If it's the group that you're willing to say, this is my people group, and I know it's narrow, but that's all I want to do. Well, then make your unique value proposition really narrow and stay quirky.
Right. That's right. Well, good. Well, any other closing thoughts? We've really covered a lot of parts of the unique value proposition, and I hope we've given some people some good direction to get things started with their own UVP. But any other last thoughts or tips?
Yeah, I guess it would be just this. Just because you've been through this exercise in the past doesn't mean that going through it again in the current isn't a good idea, because guess what's always changing? Two things at the same time. You are growing and getting older, more mature, you've had more experiences, and the world around you is continuing to evolve. So the customers you serve, the partners that you work with. So because those things are regularly changing, I would say it's possible that what made you unique in your 20s isn't what makes you unique in your 40s. Or the
Mhm.
value you connected with when you were 30 might not be the same value you connect with when you're 50. So even propositions, some of the tools you used to present your offering might look different in a world today where AI is available to you and lots of great software solutions are available, which may cause you to go deeper down that road or may drive you back to old school to where you say, forget all of that. I'm just picking up the phone and meeting people face to face. Wherever you land, the point is it's a good time to revisit your UVP. And I would be willing to say, before you build an annual plan each year, this is a good exercise to go through. So if you're, well into this year and you haven't done that yet, take a pause. Maybe you'll find out that the biggest difference between finishing this year strong and staying on the course you've set is reconnecting with your UVP.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, we've covered unique value proposition today, the each individual letter and all the pieces and parts, the who, what, whys. And we hope this gets you on a good journey of getting your UVP together. So thank you so much for joining us today on Building Bigger Lives. I'm Kathryn Peterson here with Michael Regan. Please listen, share, follow us on Instagram if you don't already. And thank you again for joining us today.